Hello everyone, I am Allison Gonzalez and I'm a trainer here at Pragmatic Works. And in this video today, I am going to walk you through adding bookmarks into your Power BI report. And then once you have those bookmarks, how can we use that and in the best way? So we're going to be making some bookmarks and setting those bookmarks to buttons as well as using the Bookmark Navigator. So let's dive right in. Let's get into Power BI and make some bookmarks and link those bookmarks so we can use them for our report. All right, here we are in the Power BI desktop. I already have a little bit of data set up in this report. I have a bar chart over here. I've got a slicer with all of the years that I have in my data. And I also have a map that shows where all of that data is located all across the United States. So I have all of this set up, set in place, and I want to create an easy way for end users to navigate through this data, especially if those people are new to Power BI, might be a little bit intimidated with the process of filtering things down. So let's say as we're working with this data, some of the things that they really need to see is they need to see the data just for Georgia. So I'm able to click on Georgia, you can see that filters it down. But in addition to just looking at Georgia, they only need to look at the data for 2010. So there's two different filtering things, might be confusing when they're starting out or remembering to make sure that they click on both of those elements. So now my map is filtered down and I'm only seeing the states that have data in 2010. And then I'm only seeing on my map the points in Georgia for 2010. And I like this view. This is a view that everyone who's using this report needs to refer to on a regular basis. So what I want to do is essentially save this view, and I can do that by adding a bookmark. Now to add in a bookmark, we are going to go up here to our view ribbon. And on our view ribbon, right here, we get to add in some extra panes. Now remember, panes are our sections that are on the right of the page. We have our fields pane in every view. Remember, our views are on the left side of the page. So I have my fields pane in my report view, in my data view, and in my modeling view. So no matter what view I'm in, I am always going to see all of my tables and all of the columns in those tables. My visualization pane, though, I am only going to see my visualization pane right here in the report view. Once I move to the data view or the modeling view, I don't have my visualization pane. And then there's other panes that are appropriate that you would see in either of those places that aren't here. So this is also where if you don't see your filters pane, you would be able to add it in, add filters for the visual on this page or as well as on all pages. We don't need this for this demo, so I'm going to go ahead and take that right back off. The one that I do want to add in is my bookmark pane. And now I'm going to click on this bookmark pane. We can see it just keeps getting added in after my other panes on the right. And when you're in here, if you're on a really small, like a laptop screen, and your panes are starting to take over, you can definitely collapse any of the ones that you're not using. That way your report canvas is going to be as large as it can to make it the easiest to work with. So I can see I have this view set exactly how I want it to be. I have my year slicer set where I need it to be. I have the state I want selected. My map is looking perfect. Now I want this saved. I don't want everyone to have to go through the process of filtering this down every single time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Add right here on my bookmark pane. And then just like a bookmark that you would stick in a book and direct you right back to where you left off, I view this really like a live action screenshot where it's going to save this view, and as soon as I click on this bookmark, drops me right back into this view. So when we click Add, it's going to add this. It's now bookmark 1. Now a good general practice I want you all to get in the habit of doing is renaming these immediately. Because as we keep adding more bookmarks in, we'll get a bookmark 2, a bookmark 3, a bookmark 4, And I guarantee you are gonna forget which one's bookmark 1, which one's bookmark 2, and so on. So we really want to make sure that we are renaming these immediately so I know exactly what this is. I'm gonna rename this bookmark. Let's call this Georgia 2010. So I'm just going to click on that bookmark, and right there in my bookmark pane, I'm going to rename it from bookmark 1 to Georgia 2010. So now I know exactly what this bookmark is. Now let's say we have a few other views that are really important that people are accessing all the time. Let's say that we also, and again, if you want to remove any slicer settings, you can always click right on that to remove it. You also have this eraser where you're able to clear that selection. And then if I want to clear off my filter from my bar chart, I can just click into that empty space and it deselects it. So now I'm back at my normal unfiltered view. Let's say next I want to look at Florida data. But I want to see Florida data for just 2009. So now I am seeing just Florida, just 2009 here on this map. So I'm going to take another bookmark of this one. So I'm going to click Add. And then of course, you know we want to rename this from bookmark 2. Click on that to get that yellow, and I know I can rename it. This is going to be Florida. What year do we pick? 2009. So now we have two views, and I can click between these and see how they're working. So I've got Georgia 2010, Florida 2009. Maybe I want to also have, let's add one in. Let's remove our slicer settings, remove our state settings. Let's add in one more. Let's say we want Illinois in 2011. So now I'm only seeing Illinois data for 2011. We're going to click Add on our bookmarks. We get bookmark 3. We're renaming that right away. My year is 2011. And now I can easily navigate through to all of those. Now, if we're thinking of someone who is not very knowledgeable or experienced in Power BI, they may not realize there is a bookmark pane, or if they're in the service and they're just viewing this report, they're not going to be adding their bookmark pane in. So we want to make this very obvious, and I left some room on the page of this report to be able to add in some buttons. That way I could individually link these, or I'm going to show you another way that makes it even easier. This update came out about a year ago, so November 2021, Microsoft created and launched the Bookmark Navigator that lets us link all of these together at the same time. Before we add this in, let's also make a default view. So that way it's really easy for them to get back to this unfiltered view, just in case they need to kind of do some exploration on their own. And they don't really know how to get those filters off. So we'll always create a nice unfiltered home view for them. I'm going to click Add. I don't have my slicer on and I don't have any state selected. So we'll click Add. I'm going to name this one Default. And I know that that is going to be the basic view. I'm also going to, and I can reorder these in any way I want. Maybe I want these in the year order, or right now they're technically in alphabetical order. I'm also going to put that default view to the very first one, so that's my first button. Now that I have these in here, nothing else is on here. Let's go back over to our insert ribbon. Now on our insert ribbon, we've got this nice button. And when we click on that, we can see we have all of these button options. So arrows, a back button, information, help, Q&A, bookmark, blank, and there's our navigator that we're gonna add in. Before we do that, let me show you how you can link these bookmarks. Let's say you just have one, and I just wanna link that one bookmark to one button. Here's the process, here's how that goes. Before I do that, I want to open my visualization pane, because as soon as we add this button in, you are going to see some action happen over here. So we're going to click on that button in that insert ribbon. I'm going to go ahead and add in, let's say I add in a blank button. I'm going to click on blank. I can see I have this nice button added right here. And notice what used to be my visualization pane is now the format pane. So that's why I wanted to keep it open so you'll be able to see that adjust. So anytime you're adding in one of these elements, your visualization pane will adjust to be just the format pane for the element that you add in. So I can see here is this button. My options would be change the shape. We've got a ton of different shapes that I would be able to make this, from hearts to just basic rectangles. I even have a trapezoid if I wanted to go with that. I can also see round corners, have a slant, adjust that trapezoid slant for this one. We're going to get slightly different options depending on what shape we choose. I can rotate this around. I can also change the style. And so here's if I wanted to add text to my button, where I would add this one in. And let's say this would be for the Georgia button. So I'm just going to call this one just like the name, so GA 2010. And let's give it a space. And then I would choose my font. I could pick whatever these, not a ton of options. The former web designer me wants to have more, but we still have a pretty good selection. I can also adjust the color, so it'd be really obvious to see on my button. I can change the padding, horizontal, vertical alignment of this. I can also add any fill colors that I want. So if I want to add a fill color to the button, I can do all of this. Now this is great. My button is looking nice. However, I need to link it. And all linking is going to happen in your action section. So here in my format pane, there is an action section. We are going to turn this on. And you can see my button types. So when I click on this now, my action would be take me back. Here are my other options. Bookmark, our second one, what we're going with. I could also link this to a drill through page, do some page navigation, Q&A, or URL. We are going to go with that second option, which is the bookmark option. And then I get to choose what bookmark that would go to. The one I'm going to choose is that Georgia 2010. Now that this action is set, I can test my button. Now, anytime that we are here in the Power BI desktop, we are in essentially edit mode. And so if I want to follow a link, I need to do a control click. So essentially, if you are used to writing emails in Outlook and you type in a URL, you send someone a link, if you, as you're writing that email, want to follow the link to verify it's the right one, you would have to hold the control key and click on that. And it's the same behavior here. Once this is published out and in the service, you would not have to hold control. You would just be able to click on the button and it would work. But since we're in the desktop in this edit mode, let's go ahead and hit control, click on that, and there we go. We can see that it's linked. I now have a button that goes right there. Now, if you are just having one bookmark, this is fine. This is easy. You can get it all set up very fast. However, if you have a lot of bookmarks, I don't want to have to do this individually every single time, which is why the update that came out last year has been so incredibly helpful and time-saving, because now I can adjust all of those buttons at the same time. It will auto-adjust to include any new buttons that I want. If I don't want it to include any new bookmarks that I've taken, I can set them into groups. So let's go ahead, let's delete this single button here and then set in the Bookmark Navigator to get all of them at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead, get rid of that. You can see my format pane went back to my visualization pane. And now let's go ahead and, again, it doesn't really matter what view I'm in. I can click through, go back to my default view if I want. I'm going to add in my Bookmark Navigator now. So again, this is in your insert ribbon. In that button, you're going to go down to the navigator options, and we have a page navigator, which is really convenient if you have a lot of pages and you're presenting this report and no way to get to your other pages. You would want to have some page navigation on there. What we want to go with though this time is our Bookmark Navigator. So I'm going to select that. It's going to immediately add it in, and I can see all 4 of my buttons here. I'm just going to resize that a little bit to fit the space. Let's look at our options. So here in my visual settings, I can change the shape of them. So you can see we have those same shapes as we saw for the regular button that I would be able to change all of these at the same entire time. And so I'm just gonna go with a basic, let's go with a rounded rectangle, that way we can match up with our other visuals. And I also get to choose how rounded do I want these to be. If it's a little too rounded, we can unround that some or make them really, really round. Get to kind of play around with that. Next up, I get to choose if I want to rotate the entire thing, if I want to rotate just the shape, or rotate the text. I can also change the style. So this is a button, and right now we only have our default and our hover set. However, we have to think of this. When we are clicking on a button, there's a few actions we can take. First off, right now the default is when we're just staring at it on the page. It's just hanging out, not doing at it. Our next one is our hover, and that's when we're hovering over our button. The other option is the press. So that is the action when we're actually clicking on it. I rarely will change my press. Most of the time I will set my default, a hover, and the selected. And of course, selected is when I actually have one of these selected. So those are the states that we can change. Right now for my default, I'm gonna adjust the size, and you can go through, pick whatever font works for you. You can update the size if you wanna make that larger or smaller, your bold, underline, italic settings. We can change the font color, and of course it's gonna go with all of our theme colors here. I'm actually gonna change my background color to be darker, so I'm gonna go with a lighter color here. I know that's hard to read for now. Let me go down to my fill section, and I'm going to change the color. And now again, I am only changing the color. Let's see if we go with this one, how that looks. I'm only changing the color for the default. So when we're staring at it, doing nothing. As soon as I go, here's my hover. Here's how that looks if it has a hover. And if I do that control click to follow it, then look what the selected looks like. So those are those states that we have. We have our default, we have our selected, and we have our hover. So now I want to go through and I want to change my selected text color. So to change that, I'm just going to go to the state, and let's change our hover color first. So I'm going to make my hover color, because I like that lighter background, but I want to make my text a little bit darker so you can see that. So now my selected, or my hover rather, I can see the text a little bit better on that light background. And then finally, let me adjust the selected state. So the selected state, my text is a little bit smaller, so I'm going to make that text size match. So now that text matches. That background color, not really a fan of that one, so I'm going to adjust it to something a bit more in my color palette. So I'm going to go with this really bright blue. So those are the different states that I have, so it can really stand out and you can identify what one do we have selected, and then what one am I hovering over to make it really obvious for everyone that's looking at it. So we've set the style. I also always love to point out with this that we don't have to just have a kind of horizontal row. We can also set these to vertical. So if the space that I had was more like this size of a space, I could change it so then they would be stacked instead of right next to each other. And that's just in this grid layout section, and you can change it just to get the right size and shape for exactly the space you have. Right below grid layout, here we are at our bookmark section. So right now this is set to all of them, but let's say I only wanted the 3 state ones in here and I wanted my default, I'm going to link that somewhere else. Well, in that case, I can make a group, and I would just have the ones I want associated with this Bookmark Navigator in that group. All right, with the one selected that I want included in the group, I'm going to right click on another one that I want included and hit this group button. Now in this right click menu, a lot of times it can be a little bit finicky with the way that you have to like highlight over the next one and right click to do that. So sometimes it might not show up the first try, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna click on group, And then I can see now Georgia and Florida are in a group. I can just drag Illinois in there. I can reorder these in whatever order I want to keep them in. I can rename the group. So if I have multiple groups of bookmarks, we would definitely want to rename these so that way we had them in the right set. So I know really easily, hey, this is not group 1, group 2. I'm going with states for this one. So now I can see I have my default button, and then I have this state group. My Bookmark Navigator hasn't adjusted yet because over here in the format pane, the bookmark is set to all. So when I click down, now I have states as an option, and that is my group name. So if I choose states instead of all, then only those 3 are going to be in here. Then I can easily click through and see exactly those views, make it really obvious which one is which. And then if I'm like, you know what, I actually don't want to put that default button somewhere else, I'm just going to stick it in here, then I can go back, switch my bookmarks back to all, and it would have it. Or I could grab default, drop it in my state group if I had other bookmarks up there, whatever's kind of easiest and works with your situation. So now I very easily have gone through, filtered my data down to some very specific views. I've set bookmarks of those views, and then I've linked those to my Bookmark Navigator. That way I can easily go through, click all of the buttons, and it immediately filters it. And again, this is a fantastic option if you're building a report and you know that those end users are going to have a hard time getting it to this particular view. Definitely set some bookmarks, make it really easy. Everyone loves to click a button, so we can set this view up very easily. When we're here in the desktop in edit mode, you are going to do a control click to follow those, but once it publishes out to the Power BI service, you would be able to just do a regular click to get those to work. So that is how you are able to set bookmarks to your data when you have really specific filtered views. Definitely save yourself some time having to click through to set those up each time. Save it, make a bookmark of it, link that bookmark either to an individual button, or if you have a bunch, use the Bookmark Navigator. That way you are able to save some time and make it easy for you as well as any end users of your report to easily access exactly the data, exactly the way they need it. So if you, like the Bookmark Navigator, have used it before, definitely share your favorite tips and tricks below in the comments. If you are new here to our Pragmatic Works channel, definitely take some time to subscribe and like this video so that way it can get shared out even more with people that need this content. So hopefully I will see you again soon in our next video. And if you have a topic that you would love us to cover here on the Pragmatic Works channel, where we talk about everything on the Power Platform and more, definitely share that in the comments below and we'll see what we can do.